You are live.
Thank you. Welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Maritime Advisory Board for the City of Annapolis. My name is Terry Lomax. I'm the chair. As is my usual custom, I will just go around my screen and acknowledge who is here, and then we will get started. We have Alan Miller, who's a member of the Maritime Advisory Board, along with Frida Wildy, also a member, Peter Trogdon, member, and Mike Tomasini, member, and Scott Allen, member. Jake Iverson from Watermark is present as a guest. We have Hope Stewart from the City of Annapolis, and we have Madeline from the City of Annapolis, and I always get COA TV, who is our production manager. So with that, we will just go ahead and get started. Hope, I know you asked about following the agenda. If you want to, we can take you first if you need to get on to something else.
Oh no, that you all can start with the maritime, the agenda as stated.
Okay, we'll just roll through that. I don't think we'll be all that late tonight. Starting out with, do we have? Has everybody read the minutes? I have. I didn't have any particular changes. If anybody has any changes, speak up, and if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from September. Mr. Tomasini has moved to approve them. Mr. Miller seconded. Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. And Kimberly is going to do our minutes from the recording of this meeting. So Kimberly, that was 5-0 in favor of adoption of the minutes. So moving on, we have Peter, you have anything to tell us about the county's Maritime Advisory Board?
Yeah, let me talk about that for a minute. That was interesting this time around. They had Eileen talking about the City Dock Resilience Initiative preparation and talking about the schedule. They were talking about funding and talking about that new Welcome Center. The Welcome Center is going to be a new building next to the Burtis House, and they're trying to figure out what the purpose, what the boaters' needs are. So Eileen's asked that advisory board about what the boaters' needs would be, and they're thinking about how to respond to that. It's an interesting question because, you know, the city wants to attract paddlers, be it paddleboard and kayak, canoe and the like, and they want to attract boats to come to the moorings. Some of those boats have facilities on them. Some don't need any facilities because they're larger and they have equipment. So it's an interesting question. What are the boaters need at this Welcome Center, which is really the harbor master's office on top, and then restrooms and showers and laundry maybe below, and other kinds of support facilities. So that's an interesting question. I think it's a very dynamic situation there. So the next thing they had there was this Naval Academy Sea Level Rise presentation by Steve Vassen, VAHSEN, Executive Director Strategy at the Naval Academy. Really a well-polished presentation on how the Naval Academy is preparing for sea level rise, along with their phased plan. They're looking out 40 years, and they're spending, I think I made some notes of maybe $90 million over the next few years in phases, preparing for sea level rise. I think everyone on our board would be very interested in inviting Steve to give that presentation. He's got a slide presentation about what they're doing and how it's going to match up with the city of Annapolis and their new seawall. Let me look here. Let me see. That's really that's the meat from that meeting.
So Peter, do we have a contact? Because I'm happy to reach out to boss. How would you spell it? VAH?
Yeah, Steve VAHSEN. I didn't get a phone number or email address, but Hamilton Cheney has it probably.
Okay.
That would be, I think it was really interesting. Guys really has a great presentation and a pretty big budget and a pretty impressive plan.
I just made a note that I'll reach out to Ham Cheney to get a contact for him.
Okay.
See if we can't have him at our November, or we wouldn't have him at our December meeting, but maybe we can try to get him for our November meeting or a January meeting and hear from him. On the topic of the Welcome Center, I think everybody probably knows, but for those out in TV land, part of the city dock renovation, I'll call it for lack of a better description, was to demolish the existing harbor master office, which functions as sort of the proposed one was or will do, and that is with the harbor master office on the second deck, and then there were existing showers, and I believe heads on the first floor, and one of the in addition to being a welcome center for the Maritime, as it's been sort of generally referred to, it also, the restroom, at least a portion of them, serve the general public, as do the current harbor master restrooms. So there's a component there that is for the general public as well as the needs of the Maritime. But and the issue, I happened to have a conversation with Alderman Arnett on a different matter, but he did raise the issue of the that there is a I think a proposal either coming before City Council or may have already been introduced about putting racks for kayaks and paddle boards, etc., at the end of Prince George Street. And I think we have to think very carefully about two things. One is, I think there's been proposals floated to put a paddle craft, I think is the generic, the overarching term, on College Creek, but also the safety concern about paddlecraft launching out of the end of Prince George Street, given that the charter dock is right there, and on a given nice day, the amount of traffic that runs in and out of along that, because that's a channel there, a formal channel, and in and out of both the city dock, Ego Alley, around to the marina next to the hotel. Excuse me. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion coming up, and probably that resolution may come to, if it goes by way of a resolution, may come to our board. But I think for the board needs to think about what the board's position might be on paddlecraft, facilitating paddlecraft launching at that end of Prince George Street. There currently is, I believe, the floating dock, but it's a dinghy dock that is occupied traditionally or typically by boaters coming in, and doesn't lend itself to a launching facility. So Mike, I don't know if you have any observation, since you're probably on the water, second only to the harbor master's office in the harbor, certainly during the summer months.
Yeah, I think there's already a fair amount of paddlecraft activity that comes out of that. I'm not sure if the rack increases the amount of paddlecraft traffic. I think it was suggested by some of the Ward 1 residents who do typically launch from that floating dock at the end of Prince George Street, but we're just looking for a more convenient way to store them rather than having to kind of lug them through town to find an appropriate launching spot. So yeah, that was my impression on at least the rack portion of the proposal.
All right, I think it'll come up again. It may come to us more formally, but it's interesting that Eileen raised it, and I know Ross raised it with me. So obviously something is happening with that, and like I say, it may come to us for some recommendation. All right, let's. I guess, Hope, are you covering for everyone on the staff? So I guess we'll just let you run through whatever it is that the staff has to say.
Yes, I'm covering for economic development at least. So our economy is continuing to go strong. We're maintaining a very low vacancy rate, which is great. As you know, as you might know, we are starting economic gardening again this year. We are planning to launch with a webinar early in November. But this year, as opposed to last year, we won't be industry specific. So as you know, last year we did the maritime industry. This year it'll be any industry, but the businesses that participate do have to fall under the requirement of being a stage 2 business. And we do hope to have somebody who participated last year kind of talk during the webinar about their experiences with the economic gardening program. And that is it for economic development, unless you have any additional questions.
You mentioned that the vacancy rate remains low. I think it was 5% a little over 5% last month. I assume it's staying in that same range.
It is staying in that same range.
Is there any particular part of the city that is weighted more heavily or less heavily?
Yeah, there is one. I think it's on Forest Drive. You know how we have that very large building that used to be, I think it's 1750 Forest Drive. That one is the one that still has a lot of space. So it kind of does veer our numbers a little larger. When citywide, we would be a lot larger, a lot smaller, but because of that one large space that still has a lot of availability. And as you know, a lot of people still aren't returning to the offices. So if you have something that's specifically for office space, as opposed to, you know, a business, retail, something commercial, it's a little bit more difficult.
Are you referring to what I call it, the old Maeve Maryland Automobile?
Yes, that's it,
building?
exactly. Yeah, the only old Maeve building, correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good sized building.
It is. It's a large building, yeah. And as I said, it is more specifically for office space.
Okay. Any other questions for Hope? All right, thank you, Hope.
And then I know you had the next one was about the task force and the reporting for the task force.
Right.
I know that Steve sent you and Alderman Arnett the report back in August. So I hope you've had a chance to review that. The results are going to be headed to our new department director, Chris Jakubiak, and we are already starting to prepare for the next reporting cycle.
Okay, good. Thank you. I will, and yes, I do recall that was sent, and I think it was something around a 50% response rate with the idea that we need to increase the response rate. My suspicion is, and maybe my cynicism, is that the ones who responded are the ones who were compliant, and the other 50% you could take an inference from it that they may be a little less compliant. So,
well, it's our first time going, so each time we're going to get better at getting those responses.
Right. It always takes a little bit of a learning curve. Mike?
Yeah, so this is just a general question. I think we had discussed it at the last meeting, but it may have been short notice about economic development's involvement at the boat shows, either one or both, as a way to kind of look at vendors who were there and potentially lure maritime businesses to the city. I'm not sure if that was either an informal effort this year or not, or if it's something that we might consider for the future to have city economic development staff at the attending a booth at the boat shows and
We
trying
have in the past.
Okay.
We have had a booth at the boat show. I wouldn't say we got a lot of visitors, but it was something that we did. And then COVID, of course, put kind of our participation on hold, and it would be something that we would look at doing again next year, budget depending. But yeah, I think just having us there and present, right, the last time we were next to the Maritime Trades booth, which I thought was a really good, partnership to be right next to one another. So hopefully we'll be able to do the same thing again.
That
Yeah, that was
segues,
all. I just wanted to put it in there as a burner for next year. And I know that they start to line up vendors well in advance, so it might be.
They do. And unfortunately, the only thing we could afford before was, I think, the very smallest possible spot. So, it's as long as we're there, I guess.
so that kind of segues right into the one item of new business, which we might as well do while Hope is here. Peter, can you give us a bit of an update on the two boat shows and from your perspective?
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. I don't have attendance reports yet, but I was there at both shows, and other than when we had a lot of rain, of course, some people were holding back. Sailboat show always has better attendance than powerboat show. I can tell you that the number of vendors and the number of boats was up nicely over the last few years. And that's really due to the supply chain, where manufacturers worldwide were able to release new models and get inventory to the show in time, to premiere new models and things like that. So there was a number of overseas manufacturers and a lot of new models. We had Take the Wheel and Cruises University. We had a fishing pavilion area. So there was a number of kind of unique newness going on, and it went really smoothly for the most part. From an outsider point of view, it ought to seem like a typical event. I don't know if all of you got there, but I hope you did, and I hope it was productive if you went.
One of the things, when you mentioned the vendors in the rain, actually, having known some of the tent vendors, they're not unhappy with rain.
Well, there's people selling rain gear and boots, and so there's a lot of apparel there, and there's a number of certainly visitors who are quite happy to visit in the rain. So, it's a tough crowd. Particularly the sailors. They don't mind the rain. In fact, being on the deck on a windy day, being on the deck of a sailboat is way more difficult than walking around the boat show with the rain jacket on. So it's nothing at all for those hardy souls.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Hope. I don't think there's anything else. Everything else was with Beth, who I don't see here, and I just looked. I didn't get an email from her, so we'll just skip over the Street End Parks, Truxton, and the Charter Dock, and move straight to Alan, Maryland Maritime Hall of Fame. Scott had texted me. He's listening, but couldn't get on a video. But if you, Alan, if you want to give us an update, I know we're trying to put together an upcoming meeting, but that's all I know at this point. You gotta unmute.
How's that?
Much better.
All right, much better. Let me try this again. So we've got the steering committee together. We've sent out emails to everybody. Right now we're waiting on Dick. He's got some challenges the next couple of weeks to get together with us, but we think getting Dick and Mary in the same room is important and worth waiting on. So we've asked for a meeting in about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm looking at it now and we're waiting on a response from that. So we're going to get together and get a small group and talk about some ideas, talk about which way we want to go and go from there.
All right. Scott, I don't think Scott had any much to add. Excuse me, because that was the same information I had from Scott earlier today. That it's really kind of waiting on getting schedules together. I think I saw that Dick was back in town the 28th or something like that.
Yep.
So that I've been assuming we'll get together somewhere between the 28th and 1st of November, somewhere in that time frame. The comprehensive plan has gone through the Planning Commission public hearings, and it was 3 months, I mean, of meetings that were open to the public. There were a number of comments, including comments that I sent to Eric Lashinsky after our last meeting. I haven't seen any revisions. I believe the next step is for the Planning and Zoning to put together the revisions. I don't know if it goes back to Planning Commission. It may well, but we'll get it when the next set of revisions come out. We'll have another chance to take a look at it. But we did get our comments in on time, so that will be we'll see just where it plays out. The steps are that it will eventually land on City Council, and it'll be City Council who has the final say and also can make amendments. And but it's their project to it's their final say on it. So we've got a ways to go. I think the time frame was somewhere in late 2024 for bringing it up to the council. So it'll have to go to the various council committees before that. So we'll have lots more time to deal with it. I don't have any more knowledge in that. So if you have any questions, you'll have to wait till Eric is available next month, or just contact him directly. I didn't have any update on house barges. I think they're still working. Beth is still working on some enforcement issues. I know there was a one at the marina there at 2nd Street, Eastport Yachting Center, that was on at least on her radar. That one that one I thought had been there for a while, but I wasn't so sure about that. But that's right now still in her world, not ours. And did anybody else have any more comments about the on the changes to Title 15? I had one comment about the permit, the conflict with mooring permits, which I will pass on to Frank Biba. But unless anybody has any other comments to those changes, I'll let Frank know that our only comment related to the conflict with the mooring permits. Any comment? Boy, everybody's just so nice and quiet today. This is quick.
Terry,
Yes.
can you just explain real quick the conflict on the mooring permits so that
It has to do with, and I think it had to do, actually, hang on a minute, I might have a note about it. The issue was the fact that I believe the proposal in the, and I may be wrong on the numbers of days, but the proposal in the Port Warden update was to do, I think, if you were off your mooring, and I can't remember, it's 60 days, 90 days, then you could lose it. Whereas in the mooring permit, it was a different time period. And that if you're going to change it in the statute, you're going to need to make sure that you do it such that it won't apply to anybody that's already got a mooring permit. It'll only come up when they, I guess, when they renew. So that was my recollection, was the only that was what the conflict was. It was just in those two documents. Gee, we just ran through everything. I'll just start with Alan. Alan, anything on your agenda? I might get dinner tonight. Frida, anything on yours?
No, we just, I just want to add to the discussion about the Naval Academy seawall that the county board had. We learned today that there are going to be 2 additional contractors coming in early November inside Santee Basin. They're going to start working on the docks and pilings there. And then another contractor will come to the outside seawall down towards the cutter shed and the practice fields down closer to Hospital Point. But expect more construction and pile driving. And that's about all. Thank you.
Frida, one totally off topic question was there was a boat by the name of Distant Drummer. Was that a Naval Academy donation?
Ooh, it doesn't ring a bell with me, Terry.
Okay.
Sorry.
That came up in a conversation that it had recently sold. I recognized the name of the boat. And it had a connection with Pete Carrico of some sort for some reason, but I was curious whether it was a Naval Academy boat or not.
Yeah, I'll ask him. I'll see him tomorrow.
Oh, I talked to him today.
Okay,
and he mentioned
yeah.
the boat, and I just made an assumption that it might have been, but if I didn't remember seeing it as such, so I'm not. But it was just pure curiosity. You don't need to.
Well, he's been there almost 35 years, and so he would know. I've been there 20, and it doesn't ring a bell. So
it's not. Then it's a bell that doesn't need to be rung.
Okay.
All right, Peter. Anything?
I would just make the comment that from my experience with the Anne Arundel County meeting and what I've seen by all my meetings with the city and the sea level rise, and the Naval Academy is protecting a tremendous amount of real estate, so much more waterfront. What's really interesting, and some people in my last meeting with the county didn't quite understand that the Naval Academy is so critically important to the Department of Defense and the Navy that there's no budget problem. There is no, sorry, here, let me cancel this call. Sorry. There's no problem with the Naval Academy finding funding. It is so dramatically different than the city of Annapolis trying to find some money, to protect our harbor, our Eagle Alley and downtown. That's just it wasn't a surprise to me, but some people were really surprised by that. They just live in 2 totally different worlds.
Maybe the federal government ought to annex City Dock, and then there won't be a problem for funding here.
Wish our harbor was owned by the Navy.
Well, be careful what you wish for. I was in the Navy and stationed in several ports. So.
Oh, well, I'm joking. But
I don't think you would see a kayak or paddleboard launched off a naval bulkhead.
I think and the other comments about paddlecraft, paddling up Spa Creek above the bridge, lovely. We don't really want, I don't believe that we really want or need to encourage more paddling outside the bridge.
Well, certainly Back Creek is also another very welcoming spot. I mean, people who boat on Back Creek sometimes find it irritating, but the usage of the Ellen Moyer Park as a launch site has really exceeded the Truxton Park, partly because Truxton Park has stray electric and you're not supposed to get in the water anyway. But
Yeah, that's a little problem.
but I think it was Capital SUP that used to be at South Annapolis Yachting Center too. And so when that went into its renovation, they moved. And so there's been a lot of that has moved over to Back Creek. And Mike, you probably see it on the water more than any of the rest of us.
Well, Jake has way more at risk with all these paddlecraft than Mike, in my opinion. Mike's got a really cool pirate boat, but Jake's got a whole darn fleet of big and small running 24/7 almost everywhere. So
well, my question was, have either of you or both of you seen a measure, I won't say measurable, but a noticeable shift of paddlecraft activity from Spa Creek, and particularly the outer harbor part of Spa Creek, over to, say, Back Creek, or even College Creek, Weems Creek? And I'll go ahead, Jake. You had your hand up. There you go.
All right, sorry, I had to unmute. It's interesting. You mentioned the charter dock and you mentioned the paddle boarders and potentially leaving from Prince George Street. Just putting it into perspective, you have a vessel leave the charter dock. It could be the Pride, it could be a watermark vessel, it could be anyone. When they leave the charter dock, they become committed, depending on the elements, the wind, north wind, south wind, whatever. They become committed to that channel that they have. And if we do have an inexperienced paddleboarder, kayaker, anything that just sticks their nose out in that channel and they don't know what to do because they see this big boat coming at them, it's just there's a lot of potential for something. I don't know what that is, but it's the inexperience. And Peter, I think you mentioned above Spot Creek. That is a perfect place, as well as Back Creek or maybe College Creek or something like that, those protected waters. But putting them in the middle of, and not only these commercial vessels, I mean, we're talking about recreational vessels as well that may not know how to deal with the paddleboarder at all. So I do think it's a hazard and something to pay attention to.
Thank you. And I suspect you may have shared that viewpoint with Beth, because I know has concerns about it. At least Ross has reported to me that Beth has serious concerns about, just from a safety perspective, for many of the reasons you just said. So to the extent that you can continue to engage not only Beth, but the Ward 1 representative, Alderman Tierney, probably would be very helpful. And Alan, I think was it you that had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to add, in the summertime, we have 12 to 14 boats a day out there. We rescued 3 kayakers this summer, 2 of them off Yacht Basin, 1 of them off the Navy Wall. The 2 off Yacht Basin panicked when somebody was leaving Yacht Basin, and I used to teach kayaking, and they just panicked and flipped over. So the captain went over, grabbed the boat, pulled them over. 1 of them we took to shore, the other one we got back in the boat. So yeah, my little small boats running around, I echo what Jake said. Those folks have no business in there. It's too much traffic. So just food for thought.
I think I'm going to pass that on to Ross, and I may ask Ross he may want to reach out to both of you, because that's a tip. Oftentimes he's in this meeting, but he said he wasn't going to make it tonight. And pass that on to him, because I know it's a topic that's probably coming up at council, and it's not a topic that's going to go away until we make a definitive decision. Let's see, Frida, we had Peter. Mike, anything else from you?
No, I mean, I guess I'll throw my 2 cents into the ring on paddlecraft, and I think that my perspective is slightly different than everybody else's. Number one, my boat is small, It's not large. It's highly maneuverable. But we've been operating adjacent to a rental facility for our entire existence for 20 plus years. And, you know, most of the people that rent from Annapolis Canoe and Kayak are beginners or maybe less than slightly advanced, right? And it does go in cycles. There were a couple of years ago where it seemed like you couldn't move out of the slip without waiting for a team of paddleboarders or who were just trying it out to get out and then onto the water. And now it appears that people who paddleboard are more experienced. There's not as many new faces in that crowd. It's the fad seems to have leveled off, and now it's something that people who have experience with it enjoy it. But yeah, I think there are times when the harbor is so busy that it is a thing that needs to be recognized as a potential safety issue. But then, most days of the week, I'm out there 7 days a week. Most days of the week, it's not an issue who's out there, whether it's a group of inexperienced sailors on their first day of sailing camp or a group of inexperienced paddlers. It's just something that in my operation we know to recognize that Monday through Friday the boat users are going to be different, and on Saturdays and Sundays it's there are different challenges. So I think it's something that we can allow to grow while also trying to incorporate best practices for making sure that there's not a safety conflict.
Yes, it's a bit like the Bay Bridge. It's one thing to cross the Bay Bridge on Wednesday afternoon.
Right.
Another thing to cross it on Saturday morning.
That's exactly right. And there might be other ways to ease the pain on Saturday mornings for the less experienced.
All right, Jake, anything else to add since you're participating?
No, I had my hand up for a second, but my point was kind of, when it rains, it pours. On those busy days, it seems like the paddleboarders and the kayakers all want to come out there. And that's really it. I mean, but perfect storm. But you mentioned you see that that it's kind of leveling off, so it'll be interesting to watch.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and we can all have an early evening.
So move.
All right. Second, Peter, that was Frida moved. Peter seconded, Kimberly. All in favor? Everybody have a nice evening and enjoy.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.